You're live.
Okay, we're back. Conference committee on H.454. A little bit after 5, the Senate spent some time looking through the House proposal and have a counter proposal that's now in front of you. Much of it, some of it you've seen before. Just wanted to put some of the stuff all in one place to make sure we're talking about a package as we do this. So we'll have Council St. James walk us through it again. So, like for instance, the first section here is not new. It's not new from what you've seen before. It's just put all in one place. But anyway,
I'm sorry, Senator Baumgartz, before we jump into that, are you all okay with the default tax rate? I don't want to
I'm fine with it.
okay. Senator Cummings? The default tax rate in the bill, does that feel okay to you? Yeah. Okay, great. I just want to close up shop on a very important yet small detail before we lose track of it.
That one's been weighing on you.
It has been weighing on me. It's very important, I think, to the future of Vermont's fiscal integrity. Thank you. Okay, great. Onwards. We like that. Thank you. Fantastic.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Share my screen. I have run out of ideas on how to name documents at this point. So we're calling this the Senate Wednesday counter proposal.
Love it. What will we do next Wednesday? Sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's not.
I'm sorry. Inappropriate joke.
It's Thursday.
Oh.
We'll just cross off Wednesday and put Thursday.
Y'all have faith in your staff at this point.
Makes it that much more attractive. Okay.
6/12.
So we're looking at this language. Language highlighted in yellow is language the Senate is proposing. Some of this is new language that you've never seen before, and some of it is language the Senate has proposed in the past. And there is one section where the Senate is proposing to essentially incorporate language that the House has proposed. Let's dig in. Schools eligible to receive public tuition. And also I should hope it goes without saying that these are just the sections that we are discussing. This is not the entire report, and there is lots more to H.454. Okay, so the first section we're going to look at is section 21, schools eligible to receive public tuition. An amendment to section 21 of the bill, an amendment to section 828. The Senate is proposing to keep their proposal of a requirement that approved independent schools have at least 25% of their Vermont resident student enrollment composed of publicly funded tuitioning students. The next section we're going to look at is on page 3, calculation of tuition. Section 27 of the bill, section 823 of Title 16. The Senate is proposing that in subsection A, we leave it the same as it passed out of the House and as it passed out of the Senate. And that is essentially that tuition follows, money follows the student, the base and weights follow the student. And then on page 4, we have a new subsection B. In addition to the tuition amount calculated in subsection A receiving school may charge, and a sending school district shall be required to pay an additional fee in the amount of the product of the base amount and up to 5% of each student attending the receiving school in grades, for each student attending the receiving school in grades 9 through 12 only if the electorate of a sending school district with at least one student attending the receiving school has voted to approve the additional district spending required by the fee charged pursuant to the subsection. For the purposes of this subsection, a receiving school shall not include an approved independent school in Vermont functioning as an approved area career and technical center. On page 5, there's a new subsection C. Notwithstanding subsections A and B of this section or any other provision of law to the contrary, the district shall pay the full tuition charged to students attending an approved independent school in Vermont functioning as an approved area career and technical center. This last clause here, the district shall pay, that's current law. C. The notwithstanding part obviously doesn't exist anywhere right now, but the last part of the clause in C is all current law. Section 28, the conforming repeals remains the same. Section 45A, this is where the Senate is proposing to adopt the House's proposed language related to the foundation formula report that JFO is going to contract for, on whether it costs more to educate a secondary student than an elementary student, and if so, what's that appropriate weight, and how do we account for CTE within the foundation formula? And then effective dates. The Senate is proposing here. If we jump to page 9, actually stay on page 8. Subsection F of the effective dates is the big contingency for the foundation formula and everything related to the foundation formula to take effect. So on July 1, the foundation formula would take effect if new school districts are operational. You've gotten that report, that 45A report back, and you've had an opportunity to enact legislation in consideration of the report. Starting on subdivision 4, and everything after it, that's the foundation formula. Above that, highlighted in yellow, the Senate is proposing that section 11, the school closure language, would take effect contingently at the same time as the foundation formula. That in section 27, which is the tuition calculation section, subsection A, which is the money follows the student, the base and weights, and subsection C, which is pulling in a piece of current law, which is that school districts would be required to pay the full tuition charged in area career and technical, an approved independent school functioning as an area career and technical center. And then the conforming repeals, those would all also take contingent effect along with this at the same time as the foundation formula. And then subsection B of section 828 and section 27 of the bill, the 5% extra that a receiving school could charge and that the electorate has to approve would be contingently effective. And this should be highlighted in green. I'm sorry. This is the House's language. That would take effect on July 1, 2028, contingent on districts being operational. The section 45A report containing evidence that it costs more to educate grades 9 through 12, and the General Assembly has failed, but the General Assembly has failed to enact legislation to add that secondary weight. And that is it. Would you like me to leave now?
I don't have any questions for Harry.
Yes.
Do you have any questions?
Not for that.
Okay.
But I think one of the challenges here is that you to have an issue of what if the CTE language. So if current tuition at one of the independent schools, CTE is $24,000 a year, and the base funding that a district gets is significantly less than that, we continue to have that gap. And if it's a non-operating district, we continue to have no way to fund that gap.
And so I guess curious, the proposal that we gave you significantly reduced it. And so I guess I want to understand better your choices about not having independent schools meet EQS or get approval from the State Board of Education around their spending. And then the part about with language that it needed to essentially, the district needed to charge the sending school, the independent school needed to charge the same amount and be sort of approved at each district. Which part of that was designed to not, to ensure that the district actually have enough money to pay the schools. And so I'm curious either how you see yourself solving those problems in your proposal or why you don't think they're problems that need solving.
Well, so let's go through it section by section to that part. I think huge give here was to accept the 5%.
Huh.
Because we're convinced it's should be a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And we just like in an effort to get to yes, when, okay, it's gonna, for instance, I haven't really done the calculations carefully, but that will be a huge hit for some of these items. Going to only 5%. And we're just saying, okay. And we obviously, the EQS is the old chestnut that comes around every year, and we have the same debate endlessly.
I've never been involved in this chestnut tree.
Where, independent schools are independent schools. And that's the difference. They don't adhere to EQS. They have their own standards. They have the Rule 2200 series. And it's,
Some of
they have,
them.
a couple have gone that route. 2 out of the, that would remain under this construct. And so that's just, you have to know that's a construct. I mean, that would mean they're not the schools they are now. They become very different schools. And it's basically they become public schools. And that's just not. So anyway, and then we put it another way, the construct you've suggested would leave, for instance, Fernwood and Long Trail out of any of raise any money, additional money.
Would they not be able to meet the EQS standards?
They would have to, there's all kinds of EQS standards are myriad, and that's not the way these schools operate. They operate differently. So that's the 5% we took out, but we do pick up the EQS. The issue about the one, you have, in many cases with these independent schools, you have like a handful of larger towns and then a number of smaller towns, some of which on the, on the outside could go to a different school, perhaps. But if you have this system set up so that one little district over here with one kid can shut down the whole thing, that's just not realistic.
What would they be shutting down?
They'd be shutting down the ability for the school to get the money it needs to operate. So to condition it on.
Isn't that similar to how the public system is set up under the proposal though? Like a supplemental district spending to happen, for a district to spend more on its high school, it needs to approve supplemental district spending at the.
No, I think what's going to happen is that within a district, a larger district, the money's just going to get moved around. Doesn't have to go. The district will get the money and they will move from one school to another. And this is really the elegance of this proposal, the way we've done it with the requirement for a vote, is that it really lets these districts do the same thing. The only difference is it requires the vote of the public to do it, as opposed to what would happen with the public system. They could just move the money around. So what we have here is a construct where in order for an independent high school to receive additional dollars, the school would have to get the approval of the voters of the districts who want to send their kids. And that's a pretty significant, we trust the voters. So that's how that would work.
So the district would have to vote, but they wouldn't have to vote on the additional spending. They would just explicitly, is that what you're saying?
They wouldn't necessarily have to go for supplemental spending if they didn't think they needed to.
And in the scenario of the non-operating district being able to raise enough money, you're just assuming that wouldn't ever happen?
Scott, you have
I think,
Not sure I understand.
what we were thinking of, and I think we're getting the now and future state mixed up. We haven't actually set the rules for how voting will happen in the new districts. Will, in order to do supplemental spending, will just a majority, or will every town, or will,
Mhm.
we haven't figured that one out, and we know we've got equity. As this was presented, I think we were looking at it, the current state, where you've got 5 towns. 3 of them may have 3/4 of the students. You've got one that's got 1% of the students. The way this is written, the 1% votes no, not to spend the supplemental on their 3 students. That would prevent all the other students from having access to a high school, essentially.
I think that's exactly my concern, that there are pieces of this that are designed around sort of us thinking of things as they are now. And I'm worried we're not thinking about all of the details and the equity in the context of the underlying bill that's before us, and what our schools, how our schools will be aligned and funded in the future.
But a lot of this is nothing happens until there is the study.
Yeah.
And if the study comes back and says it costs more to educate K through 12, then this doesn't happen. If the study comes back and says it costs more, or we haven't dealt with
Mhm.
special ed and we haven't dealt with CTE in this bill. And so if we come back with a solution for CTE,
Mhm.
then none of this happens. I think a lot of this.
Or we could just have the same
Oh,
argument.
we get it, yes. A lot of this, I think, is we're trying to deal with perceived problems in the present state continues, which may not be problems if, as some people believe, there is adequate documentation that
Mhm.
it does cost more to do students in a separate.
Yeah.
K, 9, 12.
Mhm.
So I think that's what this is trying to do, is say it has to be under the 5%. And it goes in as supplemental spending, but they can spend more. And until we do what we're going to do with CTE, the present law prevails,
Mhm.
which is what this is the present law.
So with the CTE, all we're really doing is lining up the 2 independent schools with the way that the rest of the system works right now, because the rest of the system continues to set tuition the way they do now. So why would you single out the 2 independent school CTEs and say that they would not operate the same way that they have, and that all of them do?
We haven't decided how CTE is funded in the future.
Well, we haven't, but right now it's current law. It would remain current law under this, so they would continue. The default is current law, so that CTEs would set their tuition the way they do now, because we haven't talked about it at all. So all we're doing is lining up the independent school CTE with the way that the rest of the system works.
I mean, I think if the rest of the system continues to operate that way, including what's in this bill, with a foundation formula as is in this bill, the entire thing will break.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think you're right to the extent that we know that looking at how we're going to fund CTE is a major challenge for next year. That's one of the things we have to do.
Yeah.
But the way the bill is written, public CTEs aren't
Mhm.
just continue to operate the way they do
Mhm.
indefinitely until it gets changed. Until it's the line up those CTEs in the same way.
I think, and this is my 11th year in the building, and I know you all have a lot of years too. I think we've talked about how CTEs are going to get funded for every year that I've been in this building, and we have made no changes. So in the sense that we have kept the existing mechanism in law. It's not even touched in this bill. And I'm not proposing that we do touch it, to make sure that those public CTEs receive the funding they need for those kids to access CTE services. Then I think there needs to be a mechanism for the comprehensive CTEs to also have the resources they need so those kids can receive those services. Right now, the way they receive those resources is through tuitioning. And one could say, well, don't worry about that because we're going to fix the whole CTE funding system in next year or in 2027. But like, as I said, I have seen this conversation for 11 years on how we're going to function or fund CTEs, and we have never done that. So right now I'm coming from a standpoint of, I don't, unless something happens differently than it's happened the last 11 years, I'm not expecting a funding change in 26, 27. If there was one, I mean, I'd be so happy.
I actually strangely have a lot of faith that the Agency of Education is going to deliver us a comprehensive CTE proposal.
I'm always optimistic, but I'm always cautious. And right now, in the bill, the way it was sitting right now, my kids in my area that access those two CTEs have no way to get the resources to run those two centers.
So, by the way, we should have started by saying thank you for this. But no,
Thank you.
because we tried to build on it, and we recognized that it was trying to figure out a way to get to something. We had to obviously bring back in like some of the schools that got left out of this under that proposal. Accepting the 5% is like a huge give because we know that it costs 12% more right now. And we know that what the 5% means a 5% hit, and with no ability to move money around. So, and then I think we just had to, and we recognize what you were doing, by the way, with the every district with even one kid, but that's also has the potential to have a little tail wagging the entire dog. And that has its problems. And so
I think this bill has many instances of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's where we are. And assuming, I mean, I also want to just back up here a minute and really just recap a little bit of how this has. The independent school tried to put this whole thing to bed in January when they suggested bringing from 50 something down to about 19, the number of schools that could receive tuition, bring them into areas where they're integral to the delivery system, where the system relies on independent schools for its success, and then agreed to give tuition when they thought there was a wait, and even subsequently agreed to give up, which is philosophically was a challenge to give up the notion of out-of-state tuition. So, I just want to, so there was some hope that with that, done talking about independent schools, we could move on to, talk about the 96% all the time, which is what we've been trying to get to. We've been trying to do that. They keep getting dragged back into this. That wasn't intended to, what I'm really just trying to say is just to frame the reality of what happened over the course of this and the huge good faith shown and wanting to move into the system in a way that was going to work for everybody, recognizing the difference between rural Vermont and urban in a way that these schools are so integral, especially in rural Vermont. And then, here again, giving up a little bit more by going to 5%. It's okay. It can probably survive, but we're also looking at this big construct, like you've talked about, a lot of pieces in that construct individually, we don't like.
We meaning the Senate?
But yeah, each of us have our own pieces of it, we, and everybody, like, I'm, I'm not a fan of class size standards, but, eating a lot of things, we all are.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there
Yeah,
are many
no.
things in here that I would not choose for me or my district.
So,
That's-
but I think we don't know where you're gonna end up in the discussions that are going on with with the second half of the bill. We haven't quite figured that out, but, we can
Yeah, I think
agree
it's,
on that. And there's a chance here to have a comprehensive package that works, and we need to think about it, continue to think about it as a comprehensive package.
Yeah, no, I'd love us to all be here for all the kids in the state, right? That's why we're all here. And we have a very lengthy bill and we're spending most of our time on just a few small sections of it.
yeah, I think it's also worth, I don't know, sort of what we wanted, just kind of a finer point, but I don't know if you meant this or not, but in the draft that you gave us at 2:00, I think it precludes a public receiving school.
Yeah,
They
we
would
got
not,
it.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, so they would be able to,
Yeah, I think it's gonna be
okay,
significantly less relevant with much larger districts, but it was not intentional to
Yeah.
preclude.
okay.
So I think we were quite serious about how we'd gone as far as we could. And so it's gonna, I think we're really gonna need to take a look at this and compare the.
Yes. Yeah.
In a way, though, when you said that, I had taken that largely as being the 5%. And
Oh, that's so interesting.
the 5% is, for us, it's a huge step.
Yeah, I hear that.
All right, so if we take some time with this, do we want to try to meet again this evening?
Yep.
I think
Who made
maybe,
that noise?
what do you think, 7:30?
Yeah, 7:30 sounds good.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Yeah.